I had some spare time today and kind of finished going up over the engine, got my O2 sensors plugged in, got everything away from the exhaust. Obviously all my wiring's not done yet. I have the entire stock wiring because I still need to do sensors and things like that. But I've got everything away from the exhaust, got everything clear. I've got my drip pans in place. And if you've ever started up a vehicle, you probably know that those are a good idea. Because if something's going to leak, it's going to leak when you first start it up from whatever you forgot to tighten. The second thing I always make sure of is make sure you got wheel chocks, forward and backward, because you don't know if the transmission's going to be in gear, especially if it's a junkyard transmission. Maybe it's damaged. You don't want to launch your car through the wall or run somebody over. So drip pans, wheel chocks, everything should be set. I'm going to connect my battery back up and should start. Fuel pump and starter worked fine, so I don't see why it wouldn't. Alright, you guys keep an eye on her down here and let me know if anything comes dripping out. Tell me to shut it off. Well, nothing came dripping out, but obviously something ain't right because it won't start. So let me look everything over again. I'm going to check all my sensors. Those are usually what it is, like cam sensor, crank sensor, anything like that. If I don't find anything, I'll hit it with starter fluid. We'll go from there. So it's about 2 days after the whatever you just watched. Even though it was seconds for you, it was days for me. So I had an issue where my engine wouldn't start. Everything seemed fine. Cranked, no start. So I started troubleshooting, going through things, checking things. First, I hooked up my OBD scanner, which if you don't have one of those, you really need to get one. Let me show you the one I kind of just keep laying around. So this is it right here. It's just a real cheap. It Bluetooths to your phone. It's like 20 bucks. Anyways, hooked that up. No fault codes. But what I noticed, I could see all my sensors except there was no RPM. So next thing I did was check the crank and the cam sensor. And the way I checked those is you grab your meter and you throw it on DC. And then like this is the crank sensor. And that green wire is your 12 volt reference wire. So you stick around there and you get about 12 volts. A little low because my battery's been getting drained, but you get the idea. So anyways, I did that. I got 0 volts. So I started tearing into shit, and I couldn't find anything. It's driving me crazy. I disconnected about half the sensors on the harness, still had 0 volts. Finally disconnected everything, and I started reading voltage. So then I slowly started plugging in different sensors, and I've got like 3 harnesses going on here right now. So on my, we'll call it the original harness, as soon as I plugged in, if I had nothing plugged in, and I plugged in one coil pack, my voltage would drop to 0. And it did it, and then I unplugged it, plugged in the other one, same thing, dropped to 0. So something's funky with that harness. This one, I've been testing some other harnesses. I got this one laying on top here. I've got it just plugged into the coil packs, and you just saw me read 12 voltage. So I got something weird going on with my harness. So fortunately, I got a whole pile of harnesses. This is only 3 of them. I got probably 20 of these things in my, we'll call it the storeroom. But so I'm going to rip out the old harness and I'm going to install this harness, which is fun. I'm not going to make you watch that because it's going to take me probably a good part of an hour. But sometimes you just got to know that you're going to run into things and you just got to start troubleshooting, and that's the only way you can figure it out is to pull out a meter. If you don't have one, if you don't know how to use one, it's probably one of the most valuable tools when you're doing one of these swaps, besides your OBD2 scanner to tell you what's going on. Usually, but something like this, it's not going to tell you anything because there's no codes for that. But that's where I'm at. I'm going to pull these out in a few seconds. All this will be done, and we'll probably start this engine up. All right, seconds for you, but days for me. So I pulled out the old harness, which is laying on the ground, put in a newish harness. I mean, it's an old harness, but because it's stock. But you know what I mean. So I've hooked up my scanner into the OBD2 port, and I can see all the sensors now. So it should start up. This is the first start. I know, so exciting, right? Hopefully fluids don't go puking all over the ground. I got my drip pans ready. Well, there we go. She runs. Something's not quite right, so I'll have to check that out. It sounds like it's missing on a cylinder, maybe. Not sure. I'll have to double check that. Check my coil packs again or something. Hook up my scan tool and I'll take another look in the data after this, but I'll start it up for again for you. I don't have a cooling system done yet. There's no coolant, so I don't want to run it for too long. Something's definitely sounding a little funky, so just sounds like one cylinder's off or something. So, like I said, I'll take a look into that, but it runs. Completely stock wiring harness. I didn't do any modifications except for the only thing I did, and this is kind of a little trick, I guess. When I did it to this harness, I didn't do it to the other harness. Was these are the two ground wires that normally go to the back of the head, and they're a pain to get to on a full-size truck. On these, you'll scrape your, this part of your wrist right there trying to get to them. So before I stuck this harness in, I just soldered on some extensions, bolted it to the front of the head. Doesn't really change anything. I'll throw some lube on it, clean it up a little bit. It's a little bit easier for maintenance if you ever got to do anything. You don't got to reach behind the head anymore for those. So other than that, it's a stock harness, stock fuse block. Computer has the VATs deleted and some other changes, and that's it. So it's all stock wiring. So I've got less than $100 into the whole electrical for this swap. So you can't beat it for a stock engine or near stock engine. I mean, nothing comes close to $100 wiring, fuse block, computer setup. So there you go.